Okay, everyone. After that surprise of last chapter, let us go into chapter 6, the Moorland Beyond the Mountains. But before that, 14 Sleepyhead 09, I'm pleading with you on this. I will read every single chapter of this story. I will do my best to upload all of my recordings of it onto YouTube. I will find a way to share this with everyone. I will overcome whatever trial the gods, the devils, and all of reality has in store for me. Just please do not let Plucky die during this story or at the end of it. Please. That is all I'm asking, okay? Let's begin. Dawn had broken over the moorland. It revealed a sky filled with thick grey clouds, with not a single speck of blue anywhere. There was a light mist, too, that kept the ground around fairly moist. Through the eerie haze of light grey, the shape of some large snow-capped mountains could be seen in the distance, and flatter land in the other. Wandering through the mist were the two escapee foxes. The still ablaze wreckage of the fox trapper's vehicle could still be seen far in the distance, but they were far enough from danger. Scarlet was relieved they had escaped. Just. Plucky was staggering behind her, his wounds still bleeding. Scarlet could see now in the light what had happened to him. The majority of the shot from the shotgun had missed him, but some of the pellets had found their mark. 2 had streaked across the left side of his face. 1 across his eye socket and eye, and another across his cheek, both making deep gashes. Another had gone clean through his left ear, making a rather large nick in the side of it. However, his worst injuries were on his left front leg, 1 gash on his shoulder, and another deep one on his upper leg. The wounds bled excessively. The fur on the left side of Plucky's face was drenched and matted with a viscous crimson, and dripped ever so often from the tip of his cheek, staining the ground. His left front leg, too, was draped in his blood, so much to the point he left a distinctive track of bloody paw prints across the ground. Constantly moving his leg wasn't helping, and although he was limping on it, every step Plucky took was agony, gasping and moaning in pain every time he lurched, following Scarlet across the moors. "Plucky, we need to stop. You're injured," Scarlet said worriedly. "No," Plucky started weakly, taking a deep breath every time he paused. "We need to put as much distance between us and those humans as possible. I don't think they're going to come after us," Scarlet said, looking back to the eerie orange blaze in the distance. Without warning, Plucky just collapsed, exhausted and panting heavily. He lay on his right side sprawled, gracelessly, across the ground. Scarlet gasped in shock and went to his side. "Plucky! Oh no! Plucky!" Scarlet pleaded. Plucky didn't say a word, only continued to pant. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding through his head as the rest of his senses started to fade gradually. With each passing moment, Plucky felt weaker and weaker, and also slightly colder. He was feeling dizzy and sick, his vision blurry and hearing almost gone. Scarlet knew he needed some water, but she couldn't leave Plucky alone. The long walk in the state had left him severely dehydrated, and he had lost a lot of blood. She looked around frenetically, desperately, remembering that out there, Dash was somewhere, probably trying to find them. Dash! Scarlet screamed out to try and get the hare's attention. Dash! Not too far away, Dash heard Scarlet screaming her name and without delay ran in that direction. Dash had been darting across the moorland all night trying to find them, terrified she'd been left on her own. She had seen the explosion from a distance and it terrified her, fearing for the safety of her friends. She'd almost given up hope until she heard Scarlet's voice. However, the hope she had ultimately faded when she found a worried Scarlet and a half-conscious, blood-covered Plucky on the ground. She gasped in horror upon seeing her friend in the state he was in. Oh my! What happened? Dash shouted frantically. Dash, wait at a time! I need you to go find some water! Scarlet replied, trying to calm down the hare, yet also being just as worried. But Dash began to protest, not wanting to leave her friend. You're the fastest, and Plucky needs water or he's going to die! Scarlet exclaimed. Okay, Dash stuttered, tearing up and rushed off through the tall grass to find water. Scarlet turned back to Plucky and nuzzled the uninjured part of his head as he continued to breathe heavily and dryly. Just hold on, okay? You're gonna be fine. Dash returned not too long after saying she had found a large pond nearby. She helped Scarlet lift Plucky up, who was still only half-conscious, allowing him to lean on Scarlet's back, but still walk with his other 3 legs. It took a while to reach the pond, but they had made it in time. Scarlet placed Plucky right on the bank, allowing him to reach the water. He didn't waste any time. Plucky, almost hypnotized by the clear, cool liquid, dragged himself to the edge and started to drink, lapping the water with his tongue over and over again. Scarlet and Dash took the time to satisfy their own thirst too. Scarlet had noticed Plucky's wounds had now stopped bleeding except the one on his leg. She and Dash then worked together to rip out a lily pad from the pond and use some reeds to hold it against his leg, hoping it would stop bleeding eventually. Just like his father, he now has a scar on his eye, along with one on his cheek, his leg is busted, and blood is everywhere. If he dies like his father, I need a freaking drink! Poseidon's water shall quench my thirst! Okay, I just drunk too much. That was a bad idea. Sorry, I needed that. I really needed that. Time passed. For the next few hours, Scarlet and Dash had just left Plucky to rest. All his wounds had finally stopped bleeding, and his breathing was steadier too. The poor fox hadn't slept for almost 2 days, unlike his companions. Dash wouldn't leave Plucky's side, curling up next to the sleeping fox. While Scarlet had gone out hunting, intending to quench her own hunger, and then Plucky's when he woke up. The weather had changed now. The mist had cleared as the sun had risen higher in the sky, and the overcast gray that was originally there had been replaced by a clean blue sky with smooth white clouds, allowing the sun to shine vibrant hazes of light through in places. Hello, Mr. Blue Sky. I don't think I need you to tell me why you had to hide away for so long. I guess the mood called for it, eh? And the weather. Scarlet had returned for the 3rd time carrying her catch in her mouth, a ground-dwelling bird, a grouse. She began tucking into the first of her 3 catches when a familiar voice faintly murmured out. "Hey, can I get myself one of those?" Plucky spoke weakly with a sideways smile. Dash gasped in relief and got up to cuddle him. "Easy, Dash, I'm still hurting a bit." Plucky chuckled faintly, but Dash refused to let go. Thank God. Praise Jesus. Praise Athena. Praise every god that you are faithful to, that you pray to daily. Pray to them and thank them. Plucky's going to be okay. Don't get me wrong, he's still messed up, but he'll heal over time. Given time, he'll heal. "How are you feeling?" Scarlet inquired, pausing for meeting her catch. "Like a wreck," Plucky joked, and then looked into his reflection in the water. The gashes across his face had dried, with thick black scabs. The one across his eye socket was partially swollen, and his eye was only half open. He saw the nick in his left ear too, but did not see his other injuries, although he could definitely feel them. However, he continued the half-hearted joke. "Looked like one too." "In my honest and truthful opinion, you're the spitting image of your dad. You have a similar scar as him, so once they've completely healed up, just like him, you'll look awesome. You were awesome before, but I know that scabs and scars aren't something to be proud of, but you do look awesome to me." "Well, I'm not going to deny you took quite a hit." Scarlet tried to joke back, but she couldn't help but feel guilty. "Here." Scarlet picked up one of the dead grouse and placed it in front of Plucky. "Eat up. You need to regain your strength." "Thanks," Plucky replied, genuinely. The 2 foxes ate up their food, while Dash had gone off and returned after finding some food for herself. They had all earned a good rest, and continued to lie down in the sunshine for a while. However, their rest was soon interrupted when they noticed the appearance of another red fox at the opposite end of the pond. The stranger fox stared at them for a while. Plucky couldn't help but notice how uncanny it was this red fox looked like his grandfather. The fox began to approach them, and Scarlet stood up. Ready to possibly defend herself and her companions, she posed ready to attack, and growled at the fox once he came close enough. "Easy, girl. I'm not going to harm you," the red fox proclaimed in a rather cheery voice. "Then what do you want?" Scarlet asked warily. The fox looked past Scarlet at the injured Plucky who was staring at him, and a nervous-looking Dash. "Looks like your mate has seen better days." "We're not mates!" Scarlet and Plucky both awkwardly said concurrently. Well, considering the fact that Plucky took a bullet for Scarlet, and almost died from the fragments, I'd say these two are pretty close. I mean, they are practically mates, if not close friends. If not mates. "Okay, your friend then, and the hare?" the red fox asked, confused. "She's our friend too," Scarlet confirmed. "Oh, rad. What are you, one of those... what is it?" The fox chuckled slightly. "Farthing Wood creatures, are you?" Scarlet looked back at Plucky for some kind of indication what to say. Plucky then spoke out to the fox. "Yes, we are," he announced, with a hint of pride in his voice. "Really? Thought that story was just, well, a story," the fox joked, then continued. "You guys are a long way from home, then." "You mean White Deer Park?" Dash had joined the conversation. "Yes, the story of the Farthing Wood animals goes a long way, you know, even further than here." The fox then changed his rather cheery tone to a rather solemn one. "But you're a long way away from White Deer Park." "How far exactly?" Plucky questioned. "Goodness. It must be hundreds of miles away. Beyond the mountains and much farther still." Plucky and Dash then looked at each other, and Scarlet could see the concern on their faces. "I think we were on that truck for longer than we realized," Scarlet said glumly. After quite a time of silence, the other fox was alerted by something in the distance. "Come with me. It's not safe to be out on the moors in the day." "Why would you help us?" Plucky asked suspiciously, wondering the reason for the opposing fox's sudden helpfulness. "Because it's what you guys would do if our roles were reversed, and out here on the moors, we animals have to stick together. Bring those grouse with you, too. You can't leave them out here," said the fox, referring to the dead birds Scarlet had caught hunting, I mean. "Why?" Scarlet questioned. "This whole region is game land. The humans breed the grouse only to shoot them, and if the humans find any dead ones they haven't killed themselves, they'll start putting traps out for us. Anything around here that isn't a grouse, the humans usually kill. Especially foxes." The fox explained forcefully. Scarlet was quite reluctant to accept the help of this unknown fox, but before she could voice her opinion, Plucky had spoken. "Well, I'd rather not take the risk of getting shot at again." Plucky stood up, staggering on his front leg. But the sharp pain soon shot back up it, and he decided to stay limping on free. "You're not okay to walk yet," Dash said worriedly. "Well, you heard the guy. We can't stay out here." Plucky persuaded Dash, who immediately gave in. Scarlet just stayed quiet and looked at Plucky. The reason he was in this state was because of her. The only thing she could think to do was keep him safe, and she went to Plucky's side to help him walk. She turned to look at the other red fox, who was still waiting for the group to move. "So where do you intend to go?" Scarlet asked the fox. "I'll take you to mine and my mate's earth. It's big enough and it's not too far," the fox reassured. "So what do we call you?" "Call me Buck." The fox looked back with a smile. "Hi, Buck, and thank you." The trio then introduced themselves too. The sky was still filled with patchy white clouds. The sun shone through them with prominent rays of light. What the trio had realized too is it was much colder here, though that could have been because of the strong winds over the land and the higher altitude. It didn't affect either of them in any way, but it was definitely noticeable. Buck proceeded to lead the trio across the moors, a lot further than he thought it would be. "I think his definition of not far is very different to ours." Dash couldn't help but joke, and the fox and Vixen chuckled. They then approached a small patch of a few trees on the hillside. There were also several large boulders protruding from and embedded in the hillside. Buck then approached a gap between the boulders and walked into a small opening. "Heather, wake up! We have guests!" Buck shouted down the hole. "That's all well and good, honey." A vixen then poked her head out the hole. "But did you really have to shout it? You know it echoes down there." the vixen said with a smile and nuzzled her mate. The vixen was a similar orange color to Buck, but had black ears and paws. Guys, this is my mate, Heather, Buck announced, turning back to the group, and then back at Heather. This is Plucky, Scarlet and Dash. Goodness! What happened to you? Heather called out to Plucky upon noticing his wounds before anyone else could say anything. Yeah, I was meaning to ask about that, Buck interjected. Let's just say I got on the wrong end of a gun, Plucky said glumly. Oh, you poor thing. Come on in. I'll see what I can do about that, Heather coaxed, and walked back into the earth. Don't worry. She's seen plenty of wounds like this before, Buck reassured the group, before showing a small scar on the right of his back that they hadn't noticed before. Buck walked into the earth followed by Scarlet and Dash, with Plucky limping at the rear. Well, things are looking up for everyone, aren't they? Looks like they've met two new friends, Buck and Heather. Whoa! The trio exclaimed simultaneously. It's massive in here, Dash continued. Did say there was plenty of room, didn't I? Buck boasted jokingly. The place was massive inside, but it was obvious Buck hadn't dug the whole thing out himself. The boulders that protruded out the hillside made a natural shelter that was large enough for a whole troop of foxes. There were several tunnels that went in between the boulders that led to smaller chambers. Once they were all in there, Heather took Plucky down one of the tunnels to another chamber, while Scarlet and Dash stayed in the main hall talking to Buck about how they got here. So what kind of gun was it? Heather asked Plucky. I dunno. It was big, though, and loud, Plucky replied while placing himself down on the floor. Well, I can guess it was probably a shotgun rather than a rifle, from the state of your injuries, Heather said while examining Plucky's gashes. You must have been some distance away, too. Those pellet trails are quite spread out, and they seem to have passed straight through. Plucky just stayed quiet, while Heather looked over him. She took a particular interest in the worst gash on his leg, and she took a closer look and applied the slightest bit of pressure. Ah! Plucky cried as the pain shot through him again. That hurt? Yeah, a lot. That's the worst one. Plucky winced, trying to hide the pain. Alright, I'm going for another drink. Orange juice. Yeah, that was just me pouring some orange juice. I'm not surprised. The pellet is still in your leg. I can get it out, but it will hurt. Oh, good lord, we didn't really see that, did we, guys? Hopefully there isn't any lead poisoning. That would suck, wouldn't it? Do you have to get it out? If you want to walk on all four legs again, yeah. Plucky hesitated at first and sighed. Okay, do it. Here. Heather turned around before placing the ribcage bone of an eaten grouse in front of him. Bad on that. Why? Because it's going to hurt. A lot. Can't be any worse than what I felt already, Plucky said arrogantly. He soon regretted those words when, without warning, Heather held down his front left leg with hers and used a single claw from her right paw to dig into Plucky's wound, causing him to scream in pain and bite hard into the bone. Barely half a second had gone by when Heather immediately dragged out the metal shotgun pellet, and Plucky gasped and breathed heavily in relief. Okay, that hurts a lot, Plucky panted. The gash bled slightly more, and Heather licked it clean. Plucky's scream had also alerted Scarlet and Dash, who had run into the chamber, despite Buck reassuring them that Heather knew what she was doing. Don't worry, he's fine, Heather reassured them before they could say a word. Here, take a look. Souvenir. Heather dropped the blood-covered shotgun pellet onto the floor and rolled it in front of them all before speaking again. That tiny piece of metal was traveling at you, almost 4 times faster than a peregrine falcon in a full stoop. Whoa, Plucky muttered to himself. He knew about those birds of prey through stories about how fast they could get in a full stoop, although he had never seen nor met one. You know, though, Plucky, you must have someone up there looking out for you. You're very lucky to be alive, Heather said, changing this to a solemn tone of voice before picking up again. But that should heal up nicely. Should being the operative word, and it will take a while. Buck had walked in now, too, and soon spoke up upon hearing Heather's diagnostic. You three are welcome to stay with us until it heals. That's very nice, but we should really be moving on, Plucky announced. You can't be serious, Scarlet said. You heard Buck. White Deer Park is hundreds of miles away, and I intend to go back there, preferably before winter, Plucky argued. But Plucky, you can't walk properly on that leg, Dash pleaded with him. And you're in no fit state to travel. I don't know what you know of the outside world, but it's dangerous out there, especially for an injured fox like yourself. Buck tried to persuade the young fox. Plucky, what you need now is rest, preferably until you can walk on all fours again. Heather too tried to persuade him. Soon after, she and Buck left the chamber, leaving the trio to come to their own decision. Dash, what do you think we should do? Plucky asked his friend. I agree with them, Plucky. As much as I'd like to go home, I think I'd rather be patient so you can actually get there, too, Dash said awkwardly. What's that supposed to mean? Well... Dash paused, speaking in a calm tone to not upset him. You remember when anyone told the story of your father and his adventures outside the park and how he died? I'd hate to see anything like that happen to you. Her voice had filled with worry while she had said it. Well, I'm not my father, Plucky said quietly, looking down at his paws. And it's all my fault you're in this mess, Scarlet interrupted. I'd never forgive myself if something else happened to you. Fine. We'll stay, Plucky eventually said, reluctantly. The injured young fox lay his head down on his forelegs and looked away. Dash curled up next to him, and Scarlet lightly nuzzled his head, before walking out the chamber to tell Buck and Heather their decision. Plucky couldn't resist a smile when the vixen nuzzled him, and his best friend curled up next to him. Inside his head, though, he was tormented. At the moment, the only thing he could think to do was to keep his promise to his family to return. That seemed rather out of reach now, even though he'd only been gone a week. He could still only wonder what was happening back home. This adventure had gotten out of hand. Now they were a long way away from White Deer Park, and he could barely walk. He hated this. He hated being dependent on anyone. But there was nothing he could do about it now. They were all right. He couldn't travel, and he knew if he tried, it would be suicide, and he didn't intend to repeat the mistakes of his father. The father he never knew. He tried to put these thoughts out of his head. At least he wasn't alone. He had Dash, and he had Scarlet, and made 2 new friends in Buck and Heather, who would kindly offer their home out to them until he recovered. He was grateful for this. However, he still couldn't get out of his head how similar Buck looked like Fox. And there's still the matter of the gray foxes. We haven't even gotten a mention of them since, the 2nd chapter. So what will the next chapter be like? Will we finally be going back to White Deer Park to check up on everyone? Maybe react to Plucky's disappearance? And maybe the Grey Fox conflict when it comes up? Or perhaps it will focus more on the adventures of Plucky, Scarlet, and Dash. I'll call them the Farthing White Trio. Since, Plucky is the grandson of the Farthing Wood Fox, Dash was born in White Deer Park, and I'm hoping at the end of this story Scarlet will permanently live in White Deer Park with Plucky and Dash and everyone else when the Grey Foxes are all dealt with. So, it would make sense that the spirit of Farthing Wood course through all of them. Even if Scarlet didn't come from Farthing Wood or White Deer Park, she does have a home in White Deer Park with them. That's what I'm hoping. So, this story has become really interesting. Really, really interesting. 14 Sleepyhead 09 has an amazing career as a writer ahead of him. Finn Monster has a good career as a writer ahead of him, as I've really enjoyed the story before, like I'm enjoying 14 Sleepyhead 09's story now, so I can't wait to read much, much more of this. But as always, until the next time, guys, I'm the Masked Ranger saying, keep moving forward, never lose your smile, and remember the oath. Even if this adventure does go out of hand, it's still amazing. The hero's journey continues, and this story is still going to be read by yours truly. Okay, there was a bit of a long outro there. Sorry about that. I've already done my outro thing, so I needed to do it again. Peace out, guys. Later.